I watched the Brits. I loved the Brits. I surprised myself, and I'm very keen on Celeste, and I'm thinking of just dropping my surname and calling myself Judith. Maybe Judith XCX or something like that.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Whereas on Facebook this week, they suggested that you if you wanted to find your rapper name, you basically put Lil and Lil, and then the last meal you had last night. So mine would be Little Dim Sum Soup. And well, that was quite cool.
I tell you what, the other one is like J-Lo. Mine works rather well, Judy Mo.
Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Good morning to you.
Morning, caller. How are you?
I'm very, very, very on top of everything and excited.
Okay. Tell me about your week.
Oh, well, I've been out 3 times, Judith.
Oh, amazing. How have you been out? I was going to tell you how little I've been out because I've still got floods, like 6 weeks since Christmas, 3 in January and 3 in February. I've been locked in at home because of big water.
Well, although we have big water running down the river opposite the house, we don't have anything that it hasn't overflown its boundaries, although it's going to a few times.
Yes, and it looked like it for me too. Where have you been and who have you seen? What have you done?
Well, I went out with Phoebe one night to play pool. She says it's ridiculous that I can't play pool, so we went over to the Crown and Anchor, and she taught me that my spaghetti arm that comes on when I play pool is nothing to do. It's not a real thing. It's just me being rubbish.
Which is your spaghetti arm, your left or your right?
The right one. You know when you hold the pool cue on your left, and then you.
No, I don't play pool. Do I look like a woman that plays pool?
No, obviously not.
It's a naff pub game, mainly for men, to be honest.
I thought you might have slummed it on occasion.
No, certainly not. No.
I know you have had your moments in the past.
Yes, but not pool. But anyway, so your right arm, which is your dominant arm, what does a spaghetti arm mean? Goes all limp.
Yes, it feels when you go to hit the cue, the ball with the cue.
Yeah,
it feels like my arm loses all its strength, and then it doesn't. No strength transfers into the cue.
How very strange! And what she's saying is that's about.
No, she's saying that you haven't got a spaghetti arm at all, Mummy. It's just that you haven't been taught how to do it properly. So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So she had a go, and we had fun. It was nice. It was just we just went out, just us two. And then the second time I went out, it was with all of her friends, actually. They were all getting together. Someone had just come back from Canada. They're always coming and going, this lot. You know what I mean? There's always someone leave.
That's what youth does.
Yeah, they do. And there's always a leaving do or a welcome back do or whatever.
Yeah.
So I went out and we all played pool, all the girls. It was really funny.
It's only at our age you wish people would sit quietly more.
Yeah. There's a nice jukebox in there, and they've got music from the 70s, 80s, 90s. So I chose some 70s tunes and had a lovely time then. And then and then after that we went on the night when it was just Phoebe and I. We went to. I thought we were going home, and then we went to a wine bar that Steve and I used to frequent. And there was a chap in there called Peter, who I know from the Worthing Chamber, and Phoebe's done some videos for him, filming and making cooking things because he's got a deli and he's also got a pickled chutney company. And he was there. And anyway, Phoebe found out that both of us were free on Valentine's night, so she suggested we both go out on Valentine's night. And I've had this raging ear infection in one ear or another, so I didn't really feel like it the next day. So I texted him and said, can we postpone? And then we went out for a curry last night, and we had such a nice time. And he told me lots of very funny stories about James Martin, the chef.
I do know James Martin.
Because he got to know him. He went to a big food show in London, and he was entering. He said there was a big MasterChef stand, and where you had to go and audition to see if you could be on MasterChef, either the amateurs or the professionals. And he got through to the MasterChef professionals auditions, and then they finally contacted him and said he was too old for the professionals. I said, but they have older people on the celebrity one. He said, I know, but on the professionals one, they want people who are going to go on to open a restaurant. And he said, to be frank, I'm not interested. Or whatever.
Yeah.
However old he is, he doesn't look that at all. He's very sprightly, and but he said, but on that MasterChef thing, he was one of the judges was James Martin, and James Martin was very impressed with him. They had a bit of a chat, and then James Martin's sous chef didn't turn up for his slot. You know, they do these performance slots at these big food shows.
Yes.
And so he said, "Would you, if I paid you, would you stay on and be my sous chef for the day?" So he said it was just really good fun, and James Martin's a really, really nice person. What you see is what you get.
Yes.
But James Martin told us very scurrilous tales about other chefs, you can imagine. So, yeah, really nice evening yesterday. That was lovely. I felt, because I go through these phases where I don't really want to go anywhere. And
no. I must say, my notes of your week are very funny. The first word says pool, and I thought I must be careful not to give the listeners an impression that she's been swimming on the first one. Then I wrote down Valentine's Pete brackets chutney 76 is what my next note says.
Well, I don't think he's 76. Don't put it on there just in case he listens.
No, I don't generally put it in that much detail, Nicola. This is just for me to remember.
I know he's around the 70 mark, but I couldn't possibly guess which side or other.
No, okay.
And then the other thing was I've been listening to your 432 Hertz musical.
Yes.
And I totally cannot have music or anything on when I'm working, but I find that I can have this.
I told you this was different. Yeah.
It really is.
And you really must understand this is about the frequency at which it's recorded. It's nothing to do with binaural beats or subliminal noises, and everybody's getting this all a bit, their knickers in a knot about this.
Yeah.
It's the frequency that it's recorded, which is so harmonious to our natural state. I mean, I have it on very low, and I can only have it on when I'm doing things like emails and brain training. But it's very, how are you feeling? That's what I'd like to know.
Oh, well, I mean, I've got to tell you, I had a very bad day last week. I felt very down last week because it was coming up to Steve's birthday, and I just thought, well, and I put it on, and not only could I work with it on, I had it on when I was redoing an entire sales page, but it made me feel better.
I know, me too.
Felt better.
Me too. I wouldn't have recommended it if it didn't do that, and quite quickly as well.
Yes, I did. Within a couple of hours, my mood changed completely.
Yes, I know. And they do have, if you want them on YouTube, very, very long ones. So, you don't have to dart about if you don't want to. My favourite is 2 hours and 13 seconds or something like that. And that's plenty.
So then I thought, you're going to be most astonished at me this week.
Yes, go.
I thought I'm going to go over to Judith's page and look for the Sandy Foster
affirmations. Yeah.
And then I thought, I can't be asked to read them out every day. What I'm going to do is I'm going to record myself.
You don't need to read them out. There's a link to download the audio just above there.
Oh, this is going to make you laugh then, because I made my own audio.
Oh, my God, Nicola. You didn't read the page. It's a very short, there's only about 10 words on that page. It says download here, and then it says read along here, because actually there's quite a lot of typos and errors in the written version.
So what I did was I recorded my voice reading them out with enough space in between for me to mentally
repeat. Yeah. And
then I put the 432 megahertz music behind
it. Well, you can pick a track with the 432 that's specifically about prosperity.
Yes, I did.
Oh, well done.
So it comes out at about what you said, 17 minutes long.
22 minutes, yeah.
Perhaps I was a bit quicker than that.
No, I think it's 22 minutes, including her preamble, which you don't need if you know what you're doing.
And I listened to it 2 days running in the morning when I first woke up. And I made a sale this week. A whole annual package sale, which is absolutely wonderful.
There you go. And who says? Well, you didn't actually last week. You said these things work.
Well, I'm always willing to try things.
Yes. Go back to the same page and download. Hit the link marked download and listen to Sandy's version as well.
Oh, okay, I will. Because but I thought it might be, if I was going to do it, I thought it might be good to do it in my own voice, because it makes your brain think that it's you reading it out loud.
Well, it might, and it might not. You've got a choice. Just try it with Sandy as well. Do it along with Sandy for the 22 minutes and see what you think.
Yeah, we'll do. Okay. So what about your week then?
Well, I was going to tell you about the weather, because that's the only thing that's happened, because I haven't been out. But then I thought we might talk about the Brits.
Oh, okay.
The Brits are 40 years old this year. Yeah. And I stopped watching the Brits about 100 years ago because it just wasn't interesting to me anymore. And they're presented and have been for about 3 years running by Jack Whitehall, who I don't care for very much. But they happened, what day is it today? Thursday. They happened on Tuesday night, and I didn't watch on Tuesday night. And then yesterday, it bugged me a bit. So last night I watched it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, really?
The creativity, the genres of music which range from Hans Zimmer conducting the Philharmonic Orchestra, backing Billie Eilish singing the James Bond theme, and backing Rod Stewart and skinny-legged, whatever his name is, Ronnie Wood at the end. They had a finale when they brought on the faces.
The old codgers.
Yeah, but what was really interesting about when they brought on the old codgers, and actually all night long, was the respect of everybody, irrespective of their age, for other genres. So, for instance, because of The Voice, Tom Jones has become a bit of a hero, hasn't he?
Of course he has, yeah.
When I watch The Voice, I think, well, I wouldn't want Tom Jones as mine, but the majority of the people pick Tom Jones. I've no idea why, really.
But because he can still
come on without glasses. Well, he can. Yes, he can. I agree, but he's not very. Anyway, whatever. Anyway, what was interesting was there are not very many awards in the Brits. But it's mainly about the live performances. And there were 8 live performances, Billie Eilish's Bond tune, Lewis Capaldi and Harry Styles. But 5 of the 8 people who performed live had one-word names.
Oh, okay.
Mabel. Do you know who Mabel is?
No.
Stormzy.
I know who Stormzy is.
Actually, Mabel is Nana Cherry's daughter, who won a Brit, as did Mabel this year, who won a Brit 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago or something. Somebody who I think you will love if you don't know who she is already, and you must watch it for her absolute creativity and vocal brilliance, is somebody called Celeste.
That's the only one I've seen so far.
Oh, brilliant. Lizzo, who is a bit much for me, to be honest, but very talented. And a bloke called Dave, who is from my own stomping ground, very political, and but knew who Hans Zimmer was conducting this orchestra. I mean, absolutely brilliant. This cross-genre respect was palpable. So there were people there performing as teenagers and as, I don't know how old Hans Zimmer is, but probably 80. And also what I found absolutely fascinating was, I don't know that you'll like it, but I liked it, but some of these, I'm going to sound like an old fogey now, modern tunes have a fantastic, almost Bollywood beat.
Oh, yes. The Eastern sounds very big.
Well, really, the genres are fascinating. I thought this one name thing, I think I'm going to have one name. You know, in the olden days, it was like Madonna.
Yeah.
Who else has had one name? Madonna.
Gabrielle.
Twiggy. Yeah,
Signal.
Not very many people, but 5/8 of the live performance. And also the other ones have got names like Charlie XCX and things like that. I think, I'm going to either have to be called one name or I'm going to have to put some initials alongside my name. Don't want to miss a thing. But the creativity, what I think you'll like about it as well, also with Celeste, it stretches to the fashion look, doesn't it?
She looked amazing, yeah.
Didn't she look amazing?
Yeah, she did, yeah.
And it's like, so I just sat here all night going, I don't really like this program, but it's surprising me in a lot of different ways. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. And then in the end, there was this right old knees up with Rod Stewart, and you'd think all of the sort of fatigued, trendy types would just leave at that point. But no, everybody was on their feet having a thoroughly lovely time.
Well, that's good, isn't it?
Isn't it brilliant? I know. It's like, well, what's happened to this program? And Rod Stewart's song, I think it was I Don't Wanna Talk About It, was the one that he decided to sing first of all. The message of that was almost exactly the same. I mean, I know there's not much you can sing in a love song, but it was almost exactly the same message as Harry Styles had sung when he'd stood up. He'd stood up in a sort of Diamante quasi frock with pearls. I mean, he's a weirdo, Harry. I don't know what his dress sense is all about.
His dress sense is veering now towards the Eddie Izzard.
Well, it is, isn't it? And in fact, Jack took a pop at his stylist at one point because he then wore a yellow suit with a sort of purple chiffon tie. I mean, but the point about this story is, it surprised me. I thought I was going to be able to take a few cheap shots at it, like, oh, so this is so nothing on here for me, yawn, and nothing could have been further from the truth.
Oh, that's brilliant,
isn't it?
I love the fact that you can get so enthusiastic about something that's so unusual as well.
Well, exactly, and you know how I like to surprise you about music, and I thought, and somebody else of my age came onto Facebook when I was doing this, exclaiming last night, and said what I would normally have said, which was, I didn't know who any of them were, so I went off. Yes, well, you've missed a lot, didn't you?
Well, you're not going to know who any of them are.
No.
Pay attention a bit.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd not heard of Dave before. I mean, Stormzy I love, as you know. Yeah. And his wages bill must have been enormous because he had, I promise you, 500 people on stage with him.
Brilliant.
Well, and a rainstorm. You what?
They're probably all there just for the crack.
Well, maybe some of them weren't, because,
Yeah.
quite a lot of these, they feature other people. And he did a sort of medley of all of his tunes. So he had to have all the sort of featured people on there as well.
Yeah.
And Stormzy and somebody else, Dave, I think, a couple of good chaps, made remarks about respectful remarks about how much they appreciate the influence that women have made in their music and on their tracks and everything, where the women are not particularly well represented in the, for instance, when it came to global best group or something, not a woman amongst them.
Really? So Little Mix didn't get a look in then?
Oh, I don't like Little Mix, sorry.
Oh, I
loathe them. That'll take us on to our feature of the week, because we really shouldn't say. I'll come back to that. But anyway, I watched the Brits. I loved the Brits. I surprised myself, and I'm very keen on Celeste, and I'm thinking of just dropping my surname and calling myself Judith.
I think
maybe Judith XCX or something like that.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. Whereas on Facebook this week, they suggested that you if you wanted to find your rapper name, you basically put Lil and Lil, and then the last meal you had last night. So mine would be Little Dim Sum Soup. And well, that was quite cool.
I tell you what, the other one is like J-Lo. Mine works rather well. Judy Mo, they call me on my it's one of my logins on my virtual office. It calls me Judy Mo. A J-Mo works quite well. I quite like
that. Yeah, you
actually.
Could be J-Mo and
I could be J-Mo. I prefer Judy Mo. I don't know why I do. Judimo is, they've put Mo on the end of the first four initials of my name. I think that's quite good fun.
Very good. Well, we'll have to play with this idea and see how we go with that.
Yeah.
What's fueled your fire this week?
Well, I've got permission from a client. It's been a quiet week with clients, because it's half term. And a couple of weeks ago, a client said something I appreciated in her weekly check-in, which I've discussed with her in a recent call. And it means what she said means we can use her calls to discuss the luxury of space and things going right, or what a difference it makes to our creative lives. And she's quite a new client, but she said, since signing up with Judith, I felt ... ease, ? i.e. she's not quite sure what it is to call the thing that she feels. This year feels different. I no longer feel that I've so much to do all the time. I don't make big lists. I do one job one day. Okay, I have taken the pressure off by not trying to produce and frame a new body of work for the next art fair, but something else has changed. I can't quite pin it down yet. I have lots of time to develop work, and it feels good. And I said to her yesterday, I'm going to read this out anonymously. Is that all right with you? And she said yes. So just some nice feedback from a client, a newish client, actually.
Okay. Well, two things. One quick thing. I've got my application in for the Curtis Brown speed writing course that I'm applying.
Do you mean speed writing?
No, I don't mean that at all. I mean screenwriting.
Yes, good. Yeah.
And I'm applying for a bursary, because it's a rather hefty price tag on this.
Yes.
So I've got 3 things out there now. I've still got the possibility of the BBC Writers' Room. I've got the possibility of a bursary for the National Film and Television School screenwriting course, and my preferred one, because it's jammed into 10 days. And then the Curtis Brown one, you have to go to London, I think, once a week for 17 weeks, which will be a bit of a chore, but I'll do it. And then also I've been doing Helen Pritchard's LinkedIn challenge, Get Leads from LinkedIn 5-day challenge. Sarah put me onto it, and so did Paul Fugel, because they were both doing it at the same time without realising it.
And I've got a client that's doing it as well, or somebody in I Love My Life is doing it. She said Nicola mentioned this on the podcast, Judith.
Oh, well, I really rate it, actually. I think she's doing an absolutely awesome job. Well, she's been doing it for a while now. She had a digital marketing agency and then decided she hated it, so stopped it. But she gets thousands and thousands of people into one Facebook group, and then she also gets them to sign up to her messenger.
You've got like a waiting list group, hasn't she?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's a really clever idea. And then everyone moves over into a new group where the challenge happens, and at the end of the challenge, you'll get booted out. But she's extremely strict. I really love how strict she is. But she's working her ass off. They basically post the task, then she goes on in the afternoon to do a live to answer questions about the task. You only are allowed to comment about the task. You're not allowed to put any links of your own in. No, nobody is allowed. Everybody keeps popping up and trying to wriggle their way round the first task she's given you, and she just comes on and says, look, you're either here to do this challenge and do what you're told, or you might as well leave, because there's absolutely no point in trying to get me to change my template of what I want you to do, because this is what's been proven to work. So why do you want to do it differently?
Yes, do you want it or what?
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. And then she comes on in the evening and does a live with wine. When she says, and the thing I like about it, she's got a busy life. She's got teenagers, and she was up in Edinburgh this week. So she basically says, no, I can't tell you when I'll be going live. If you sign up to my messenger bot, you'll get a notification, and then I'll come on and I'll have a glass of wine, because I'm spending a couple of hours every evening with you lot, and I'd like a glass of wine with it.
Not that she has to justify that at all.
No, of course, but she's but I love the fact that she's so doing it exactly her way that suits her. And I'm really impressed with that. And the tasks have been very good so far. So, yes, highly recommend that. And then, obviously, we're on to the third day. Because I originally started doing it because I wanted to see how she did the actual challenge bit of it.
When you say we're on to the third day, it's Thursday today. So did you start on a Tuesday?
No, we're on the fourth day, sorry.
Yeah, Monday. And, so Monday, what was the date on Monday? 19th, 18th, 17th. She started her 3-monthly challenge on the 17th of February.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she does it once a quarter, yes.
Yes.
And she got thousands. I'm not joking, there's about 3,000 people on this challenge. And it's the comments are just astonishing. But the funny thing is, you keep seeing over and over again people trying to wriggle out of doing it her way. It's just, it won't work for me, it won't work for my business. My business is different.
Is it free, this, or do you have to pay?
No, it's free.
So if you're wriggling out on tasks set for you in a free group, you might just as well leave.
I know, exactly. That's what she says.
Yeah.
And so we're up to day 4, where we're going to be sharing testimonials, social proof, and we've been offered the chance to join her mastermind, which is a 1-year thing. And I don't know how much it costs. I haven't really paid any attention to that yet, but she's, so a good £300 discount on it, whatever it is. So she's absolutely making no bones about the fact that, and she really isn't deviating from the things in the challenge. And she just says, no, we don't cover that in this challenge. It's in the mastermind. So she's not trying to sell anyone anything. She's saying, it's basically, do you want it or what?
Yes. So the LinkedIn challenge is about leads, is it?
It's about getting leads from LinkedIn without being spammy, without messaging people. It's about attraction marketing, 100% attraction marketing. It's about being a lighthouse and letting people come to you, shining your light and letting people come to you.
Okay.
So I've been very impressed with it so far. That's it for me. What about you? Have we done?
I went first. I told you my testimonial.
Oh yes, so you did. Right, let's talk about the focus of the week then.
Yes, I've written here, trolling the dark side of social media.
Yes, because of course we had the terrible, terrible news about Caroline Flack this week, and she was being hounded and trolled terribly, apparently. I didn't know that. And of course, everyone who has been talking about it is outraged about it, although they're probably some of the people that troll people anyway. And I had a really nasty situation at the weekend as well, which upset me rather. And I've never actually been trolled particularly badly, and I've never cared that much when anyone did send me nasty emails. I've just binned them and get on with my life. But I had a situation. I've got this Super Life group, and there are 3 topics that set people off in there, and you can just see it coming a mile off. But it always seems to happen when I'm out or unable to respond immediately. Sunbeds on Calugria Beach set them off. The cat situation, much better than it used to be, but it's still there. And the other one that sets them off is when people start asking for recommendations for taxis or accommodations.
Right, so hang on a minute. The one in the middle was cats.
Yeah, cats. Yes. Stray
yes.
cats.
Yes.
And the final one that sets them off is recommendations.
Yes.
Half the people get really annoyed when people ask for recommendations rather than searching for previous recommendations. And half the people think that people should be able to ask for recommendations. But what happens to the recommendations thread is the people who own accommodation just start popping in and putting their URL of their website or their Facebook page in. They don't put any description or anything, and it's not a recommendation, it's a promotion. So I tend to delete those because you're not supposed to. I do let people promote their stuff on Saturdays and Sundays, and I don't see why when someone asks for a recommendation for an accommodation, you putting your URL in, it's not a recommendation, is it? the point is, anyway, but what winds people up beyond belief is when I start changing the rules. If I think to myself, okay, I'm going to make a new rule to say that you can't do that because it annoys people, then the other people get annoyed because I've changed the rules, and I've been called a power-hungry dictator, and I'm not, there's too many rules in this group. I'm off to start my own group. Well,
good, yes. Off you go then, off ski, yep.
Yeah, and but then I had a little chat with some of my ladies in my writing group, and one of them particularly was particularly nasty about it all, and I just felt I'm sorry I'm not telling you what you want to hear, Nicola. And actually, I asked for advice about how to deal with it, because the latest thing is that people have started trying to join the group as their Facebook page, which means that every time they post a picture or make a comment, their Facebook page name shows up, not their personal name, which is another way of promoting their business. And so I've said that nobody can join as a page. So I wrote to the 19 pages that were in the group, and I said, look, I'm changing it now so we can only have personal profiles. Can you please rejoin as your personal profile? And there was one woman who's very well known and very well liked in the area, and we couldn't work out why she was still showing up as a page. Then I figured out that she'd actually made her personal profile into her business name. So instead of having,
yes, quite a few people do that. Have you seen that?
Well, it's against the Facebook terms and conditions, and
right,
they are running the risk of getting closed down.
Okay.
And I told her that. I said, what you've done here is you've changed your personal name to your business name, and it's against the T&Cs. But now it looks like she's in there as a page, and everyone's getting cross because they can't be as a page.
Yeah.
And I can't. She said. And she started talking about it publicly in the group rather than talking about it privately on Messenger. She started talking about it publicly in the group and playing the whole victim thing. I'm a single mum, I'm struggling to keep a business going and all that business. Victim drama triangle we talked about last week, right?
Yes.
Making me the persecutor, even though I was trying to be just a moderator. And then she said, well, if you must kick me out, Nicola, you must. I know you need to run the group as you see fit. And then someone else piped up and said, well, I'll come in every week and promote your business for you. And I thought, no, you bloody well won't, because you're not allowed to promote other people's. But anyway, bogged down in the details here. But the point was, it got very nasty, and I got very upset about it, to the point where I nearly thought, I tell you, if I hadn't been in business with someone else on this Stupid Life thing, I would have just shut the group down and walked away, because I thought, I really don't need this.
No, absolutely right. Yeah.
And so that was just a tiny, tiny taste of what people who really get trolled would experience.
Yes.
And
funny enough, the drama triangle, I think, is pertinent in the Caroline Flack story.
Go on then.
Because the victim, perpetrator, rescuer roles are all played out in her story.
Yeah.
I think, I saw that man on LBC, James O'Brien. You know him? He's quite mouthy and opinionated, but balanced. And he doesn't put up. He's a phone-in, and he doesn't put up with any nonsense. And he used to be a celebrity page editor on one of the newspapers, and he said, if we were still back in that era, I might have been on the other side of this, where we were selling newspapers off the back of Caroline's tragedy before, during, and after. And he said, if it wasn't for the fact that I had an editor who still had some values and standards and would tell us when to stand off and not attack people, he said, I wouldn't know what I do now about how to behave towards other people. But he talked about Mark Wright, who came to fame through The Only Way is Essex.
Yeah.
And I've never seen any of Caroline's, naff work like Love Island. I've only seen her when she strays onto BBC, and she was on Strictly, and she was totally brilliant. So when Mark Wright said what you've just said, which is, when I'm trolled, it hurts. And James O'Brien, who's quite tough, said, I was very moved by hearing a celebrity say how much it hurts And once he was almost not crying, but you could see he was moved by this. I think Mark was crying when he was telling the story. And I think he saw things in a different light. And I think what's interesting about what happened to you in your group and what happens online and what happened in Caroline's life is that it's a bit like when you're behind the wheel of the car, you feel more powerful than you actually are. And somehow on social media, people feel it's okay to say things that they wouldn't otherwise say.
Absolutely, yeah.
If they were sitting next to them on the settee, they wouldn't say the rude things they are when they feel empowered at their keyboard. Yeah. And when I said just now I didn't like Little Mix, this reminds me of a story that happened last year. One about Little Mix, but one about another person. And she was on my favourite television programme, and I put a link out, and women came back and said, "Oh, I don't like her." And I thought she didn't come across very likeably in this program, but I couldn't allow myself to be drawn into this argument, because I don't think women particularly, or people in general, should say, "I don't like X famous person." I can say, "I don't like Love Island." I can say, "I don't like her creative output," but I don't know her. Who am I to say or pass judgment on another person's life? And so I shouldn't say I don't like Little Mix, because it brings out the worst of me, and I'm dragging down women trying to earn a living. I should say Little Mix are not really for me. I should talk about their creative output, not about themselves. Yes. Yeah. And I'm particularly sensitive with this with women. Let's try not to say, women's lot is hard enough anyway, isn't it, getting ahead in the world? And it's clear that quite a lot of this is around. My mother used to have an expression which was sort of funny and sort of ironic, but isn't really, which is, she's no better than she should be. I think that, if you get uppity or ahead of yourself, or you wear clothes that draw attention to you, or you have a life that's constantly in the tabloids, people think we think we know famous people, don't we?
Yes, you do. Yeah.
If you meet a famous person in public, you go, "Oh, hello, how are you?" Like you know them, because my mother used to call the Princess of Wales Diana, as if Diana was her best friend, because she'd read everything that Diana had eaten, seen, drunk, and played with in the tabloid newspapers or on the television. She felt she knew her, and Hello magazine and all of that. So this cult of celebrity, well, it's a very dark place, Nicola.
Yeah.
And the trolling thing is about how powerful you feel online to say horrible things to other people that you wouldn't do in real life. But what it does is it shows, not Caroline, but strangers being vile to other people. It shows that there's there's a much bigger stream of nastiness in the world than I want to know about.
Yeah.
I mean, I can make a bitchy comment along with the best of them, but I try not to, and I don't often, and it doesn't occur to me very often. I'm not a bitch, actually. I might be critical, but I'm not a bitch. And when I see these breathtakingly shocking things that other people are saying about other people, it makes me think, oh, there's quite a rich, deep seam of unpleasantness in the world that people are just managing to keep a lid on.
Yeah, it makes them feel better to be nasty about someone else. That's
not nice, is it?
No, it's not.
That's not nice, and I don't want to live in a world where that goes on. And I wonder why. Why do people feel that? Is it resentment of other people's success, or
the person I have particular problems with? I think is resentful of my gung-ho attitude, because they're quite timid. And I think that's why she's constantly having a pop at me in a passive-aggressive way, because I get on and do things. And the screenwriting, I know is particularly winding her up, because she was the one who introduced me to the idea of screenwriting and shared some resources. And when I went for it, started reading scripts and started writing and started submitting to things, I think it's just wound her up. And this is her way of taking little snipes at me. And I can see it a mile off what's going on. But why... And the thing is, you can't get drawn in. I thought I could not retaliate, but I could go back and argue the toss here. But then I thought, I'm giving it, I'm wrestling with pigs, basically, and that lovely expression. And I'm not going to do it. I'd rather go off and play some 432 megahertz music and make myself feel better.
Well, that's the only way to manage it, I think, isn't it?
It is, and it is such a shame about Caroline. I cannot understand how anyone can actually do that.
Well, I can. I think that
I've been in places where I've thought about it.
So have I. There are a lot of. Thank God that in 2020 and fairly recently, leading up to 2020 and beyond, we can now openly talk about mental health issues.
Yes.
And Caroline was a twin. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
She was a twin, and she never found romantic happiness in her life. And worse than that, I was trying to think overnight of the books that you recommend on these topics. You're always laughingly talking about a book called How to Love a Bad Man or something like that. I don't know what it's called.
How to Love a Difficult Man.
How to Love a Difficult Man. She had that thing that we all go through, I think, and most of us grow out of, which is many, many nice men were drawn to her because she was very attractive. And you could see it on television programs that I watched her on. She was beautiful. But what I'm saying is I saw men, very nice men, attracted to her. But unfailingly, she picked a wrong one.
Yeah.
And they, yes. And in the end, there's a lot of unpleasant unhooking misery that goes along the line with that. But clearly she was unhappy. And if you're unhappy, imagine this scenario, you're unhappy, you're worried because there's a court case coming up and you're not allowed to talk about it and defend yourself because that's a breach of whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And the press and social media are ganging up on you and you've already got mental health issues.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that is an accelerated route to topping yourself.
It's a perfect storm of misery.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yes.
And if a nice woman who we all like as our sort of glamorous best friend and looked at her and thought, I wish I had the chutzpah to do things like that now and again. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't want to live my life like that. But I would march to Westminster to protect her right to live her life like that.
Yeah.
But it didn't bring her any happiness, which is a shame.
Yeah. And
and I think in England what we do, and probably America, I don't know, is that we root for people on their way up, and then as soon as they're up there, all we do is pull them down.
Yeah.
Horrid.
Yeah. And it's very, very interesting how many people are off social media.
Yes, quite.
The other thing that's come up through, it was Steve's birthday the other day, and
yes,
my son Nelson put unknown to me, put on a rather eloquent in his own way eulogy to Steve, and Steve's oldest best friend popped up, Simon, who'd met Steve when he was 12 and had been a real father figure to him. And he was popped up and texted me. Actually, he said, I'm not on Facebook anymore, I don't do social media at all, but my girlfriend brought this to my attention, I'd love you to pass on my thanks to Nelson for saying those many things.
Yeah.
And so I'm quite. And there's quite a few people I was talking to Phoebe about the other night. I said, show me a picture of him. And she said, no, I can't. He's not on social media. So there are quite a few people of that age group just going away from it completely.
And mine. I think if we didn't need it for our businesses, and even when we do need it for our businesses, on a bad day, I'm in two minds, quite 50-50 about this, which is half the time I enjoy it a lot and half the time I can't wait to leave because it's so unpleasant.
Yeah. Well,
I think younger people, the parents listening, must have ways of looking after and protect. Well, my brother and sister-in-law do not allow their 3 grown-up children really to be on Facebook or Twitter at all.
Really?
Largely because they've got corporate careers.
Yes. And did they? And was that from when they were children?
I think they were on it briefly, but at some point, my brother and sister-in-law, because they don't really understand social media, just see it as a bad thing. And so at some point, they've clearly banned it and explained to the kids that nothing that you put on there ever goes away. So if you want to get a career and keep it, stop it.
Yes, I let my children, I didn't let them have phones till they were about 10 or 11, but even then I made it very, very plain to them that it doesn't go away and that I could see pretty much everything they did, even when they were trying to make
I do think there are certain groups here who are very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I'm sure their parents who are listening to this are taking steps to protect them. And you do see the rise of people now who take their phones away from their families at weekends so they can have some, whatever you would call it, quality time.
Yeah, family time. Yeah.
Yeah, which does seem to be working rather well.
Yeah, people enjoy it once they get into it.
Yes, they do. They sort of sulk for a bit, and then they start talking to each other. It's a bit like Christmas Day when you play games instead of watching the telly. You get a lot more out of each other.
Yeah, talking of which, you see that picture of me at 19 playing charades. I was so glamorous, my God.
Was that the one in the wide orange trousers?
Yes, and the white,
Yes.
they were culottes, Judith.
Yes.
And the white shirt. I'd totally forgotten all about that shirt, but then I remembered how much I loved it. I made it. It was so wonderful. But see yourself as at 19 or 20, all animated and thin. It was quite a shock. Moving on. Is that us done then?
I don't know. Let's just have a think about it. What's the really, really tragic and expensive lesson in the death of Caroline Flack?
I don't know. Thinking about my own experience as well, how can I avoid that happening again? I think if I hadn't asked for the opinions on how to handle it of my other friends, I wouldn't have laid myself open to the
that's a good point. I don't really very often invite opinion. And when I accidentally invite opinion, I mainly delete it because it usually goes in that direction.
Yeah. I think I was subconsciously somewhere slipping into the victim role there. And looking for being bolstered up a bit. And perhaps that woman realised that, because when she said, I can't say what I think you want to hear, Nicola, and then proceeded to say some other nasty stuff instead.
Yes.
I laid myself open to it, really.
I think that's true. I think if you ask for an opinion, you risk getting one, don't you?
Yeah. And so perhaps that's the answer to it is...
Well, I think if you're a media celeb, which we're not, blissfully, you're required to be on all of these platforms, aren't you?
Yes.
By and large, unless you are in control of your own career, I'm sure it was a requirement of her contract on Love Island that she was highly visible talking about the content of the programme on Twitter, etc. And that just brings forth, I think actually if the contract requires you to do that, then the contract should help you police and manage that.
And then the contract should look after you.
Yes, that's what I meant. Don't leave you alone with it. Yes. Don't leave you alone with it. It's horrid, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you think that was half the battle? Is the fact that
No, I think it was this impending court case. And there are some horrible people in the media, Piers Morgan and that very right-wing woman, what's her name, Katie something, who will slag off anybody for money. I think they're paid to do that because that creates controversy, which sells newspapers. And but the newspaper people who've done this have made money out of her before by being nasty about her, and then afterwards by reporting it all. So everything unpleasant in our world always comes down to money, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does. So in conclusion then,
how to stay safe? I don't know.
How to stay safe if you have to be on social media for your business? Use
it 9 to 5. Don't invite
opinions.
Yeah, don't invite opinions and block. I think, remember, I don't use Twitter, so I don't know very much, but it does look very nasty when I go on there. And even though I only follow about 50 people and they're all my friends, they're all moaning about things. So I don't like it. But I think the thing I love about Facebook is if anything turns up that you don't want to see or don't like, you can block it or delete it.
Well, I curate my Twitter feed religiously.
Quite.
And I have a really nice experience on
Yes.
Twitter. But yes, I think the main thing is to not invite other people's opinions of what you're doing, and to not look at other people's opinions of what you're doing.
Yes, that's a good one. The second one more important than the first.
And more difficult to do too, because you see all the time on dramas and things, people looking at what people have said about them when they shouldn't be, when they know it's going to be a bad experience. But how do you stop yourself doing it?
Well, there's another thing as well, which us wordsmiths would understand, but I don't think the majority of the world does. When you allow recommendations but not promotions, to many people that's the same word.
Yes,
but it's not.
No, totally.
It's a completely different meaning.
Yeah,
and I think that's I was going to say a subtlety, but in my linguistic terms, it's not even a subtlety, but it's a subtlety that needs policing or explaining at the very least.
Yeah, because a recommendation is a third party.
Exactly.
Recommending something they've personally experienced.
Exactly, yeah. And you brought up another thing I really loathe, when people just share a URL without any explanation about why I should go there and what's in it for me.
I know, that's idiocy of the
It is. Yeah, why am I going to click on a link? If you could just say, what you'll learn from this link is X, Y, and Z, then I'll know whether or not to click on it.
And a nice picture, ideally.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, so I've recovered. I was about to close the group down and walk away from the whole thing. And if you remember that it was the actual two of my writing group that asked me to start Super Life in the first place when Thomas Cook went down.
Well, and that's always the most annoying thing when you get this righteous indignation where you feel so misunderstood. You say, "Oh, the irony of this is they asked me to start it," and one does end up in this place of
victim.
Yes. But it's not nice, and I'm sure Caroline's is not the only death attributable to this, not the first and not the last, sadly.
Yes, unfortunately, it does seem to be. The other thing that social media has done is making suicide so much more public. And I know lots of people kill themselves that we don't know about. I actually heard about someone's father that killed themselves the other night, and I just thought. And they say that if someone is exposed to someone who's killed themselves, then it makes them 30% more likely to consider doing it themselves.
That's interesting.
And because I watched the program,
so it glamorises it in a way, or gives other people permission to follow. If Caroline did it, it's all right for me to do it. Normalises it.
Normalises it.
Yeah.
If by social media and the news we're finding out all the time about more and more people who are doing it, whereas before it would have been kept hush hush in the family, perhaps, then it's normalising it for a lot more people. I watched a program about mental health. It was called Losing It. And I can't remember, I think it was on Channel 4. And it was 4 programmes about the overburdened mental health services in one particular region. And each week it was about, one was about women, who had postnatal depression and things. And one was about children. And the amount of children who talk about killing themselves and self-harm is, but she said, one girl said, it's a trend at my school. Everyone's doing it. It's a trend. And if it's a trend to self-harm, then it can also be a trend to talk about killing yourself, especially if you start getting attention from your parents and your medical.
I wonder if this is one of these things that's always been. It's just much more visible now we have the internet for everything.
It is. Yeah. And if it's normalising it on the internet, then more people are going to think about doing it and doing it.
Maybe. I do think you need to be either out of your head or quite brave to kill yourself.
Yeah, or in a desperate place. And
yes.
And perhaps
I would lump that all into the first one, And
you regret it the minute you've done it, but it's too damn late then,
Well, I don't know that you're compos mentis enough to regret it, are you? Depending on what you've done, if the trains run over you, you're not in a position to regret it.
Well, apparently men do a lot of things like that. The women do a lot, women do
it at home. Yeah.
They do it at home, yes, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so
let's move on to word of the week.
Yes. Mine is reboot, because I'm feeling rebooted by this challenge. And I think free challenges might be a good way to reboot you if you're feeling a bit stale in your marketing.
Okay.
What about you?
Mine is surveillance, because talking about the dark side of online stuff, do not miss this week's Panorama, which is about Amazon and what they know about us, especially via Alexa and Ring, the doorbell thing, both of which we've invited into our homes in the name of convenience, but in return for which we've given up our privacy. So anything that's connected to the internet in your home is able to monitor what you're up to, whether it's a lawnmower or a Hoover or a smart meter.
Well, you need smartphones for monitoring, because I get ads.
Well, I was going to upgrade my non-smartphone to a smartphone, but I'm not sure I'm going to do that anymore.
See, we ought to have a whole focus of the week about this, perhaps one day.
Well, it depends, because I think everyone knows, don't they, that what was obvious on this Panorama show was that the convenience of Alexa, which frankly I don't see, but I can see that other people could see it. And oh god, you must watch it anyway. Panorama about Amazon, and it's all about big data, the power of big data, which is actually quite fascinating. But everything that you invite into your home that you then connect wirelessly is able to watch you and listen to you. And at the moment, not sniff you or whatever the other senses are, taste you. But at the moment, it can. And you think, well, I'm not doing anything, and more fool them if they want to watch me picking my nose and sleeping. I don't think it's that so much. It's about, you'll see on this. I lived in a house for a while with the Ring doorbell, and it's fascinating because you can see people behaving outside your door and stealing your Amazon parcels, and who's ringing your doorbell before you answer it. It's brilliant. But in America, what they've done is they've allowed it to be turned into a sort of surveillance link-up where there's no privacy anymore. And my brother would say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, you've got nothing to fear. If you're not a burglar, you've got nothing to fear. But actually, when I was brought up, there were such things as civil liberties. Well, there aren't any more, because we're owned body and soul by the powerful.
It is science fiction land, that's for sure.
It is, Nicola. It is science fiction land. Yeah, it's here already and has been for some time. And it's a trade-off. This convenience for safety is a trade-off I'm not prepared to make. I'm going to hold out as the last civil libertarian on the planet, if needs be.
Without a smartphone.
Yeah, without a smartphone. Yeah.
Hilarious. Right, project updates then, very briefly. We're up to
none from me.
None from you. I've got 136,398 downloads. We've jumped over the 136 thing. I've redone my entire sales page for Be Everywhere Online, and I've on Thrive themes, and I'm.
Oh, that's out. Good. Okay.
And I've also funneled every bit of traffic on my website through to that page to see if. Because I'm really pleased with it, and I think it explains everything very well. I haven't quite finished it yet. I've still got, but I tell you how I did it. I saw another great sales page for something else that I wanted, and I thought it was a completely different industry. But I thought, oh wow, that explains everything so well. I'm just going to take each section and model it with my words, and so I think it's doing a much better job of selling the Be Everywhere Online than it did. That's it. What about none for you? Right, we're on to Who or What, and we're running out of time fast. So
yes, David Baddiel's BBC documentary about Holocaust denial. He's an intelligent man and an interesting broadcaster. And if you don't want to watch the documentary, there's a dramatised account of this in a great film called Denial, where the expert in David's documentary is taken to court by a renowned historian who wants the world to believe the Holocaust never took place. And they defend vigorously and win. And she's represented by one of London's best lawyers. Both the documentary and the movie are very moving, because of course you get to meet a handful of the last living survivors from the Holocaust. But David Baddiel, I think, is a very interesting man, and it was quite a hard watch, but worth it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll give that a go.
And social media appears in there as well, where people use social media to say that the Holocaust never happened, and Facebook come on and explain why they allow people to say that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, right. Well, I've got into a new podcast. I was reading.
I saw you excited about it on Twitter.
Right, yes. See, I always forget that you're watching on Twitter.
It's called Somebody and Somebody Go to Hollywood, isn't it?
It's called Sam and Jim Go to Hollywood.
Yes.
And it's two writers who started documenting their journey to become screenwriters from when they had restaurants together, and then they decided they always wanted to be writers, but they never did anything about it. They went into the world of work instead. Ended up owning two very successful restaurants together, and then they sat there, had a midlife crisis at the bar and said, "No, let's go to Hollywood." So they put managers in their restaurants, sold their houses, took their wives to Hollywood. They are hilarious, Judith. They're two Americans, but they've got such British senses of humour in a way, and the whole thing is from before they started, and every single episode is about them inching slowly forward and writing and meeting and going for meetings, and they're so rude about the people they go to meetings with, and it's just honestly,
that doesn't sound like a good strategy, to be rude about people you're going to meetings with if you're hoping to create a career in Hollywood.
Well, I think that they were thinking nobody was listening to them, and then about episode 14 they actually go to a meeting and someone says, "Oh, you're Sam and Jim," and they realise that there are people listening to them. And I'm carrying my phone around so that I can listen to it whenever I've got a spare minute when I'm washing up or waiting for the kettle to boil or whatever. And it's like having a portable radio, and it's just hilarious. And I love the whole thing. So I'm thinking I might start to document.
Well, I was just going to say, it's quite a brave thing to do, to document a story, because you never know where it's going to end up.
Well, that's right. So what I thought I might do is, because I've got these 3 scripts out, and what if one of them hits? What if I get through to something? I won't have documented how I feel before that happens. So I thought I might just record a couple of episodes of a potential podcast of me talking about how I got here, and then me just talking about how I feel about waiting for these scripts to hit or not, and then I can document what happens when the rejections come through.
Of course, you don't have to put the recordings out.
No, that's
you can record the story in case.
Yes, that's what I was thinking I might do. Yeah, And that might be an interesting story if I do then go through to something. And, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to record a podcast without publishing it. So, but yeah, Sam and Jim Go to Hollywood. Very, very funny. It's, even if you're not a scriptwriter, if you're any kind of writer, I think you'd enjoy it enormously. And that's us for the week, isn't it?
Yeah, very good. See you next week.
All right. Bye.
Okay, bye.
It's a brand new day.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.